Amplifiez votre passion pour la guitare pour quelques euros par mois. Rendez-vous sur lachaîneguitare.com. Amplify your passion for the guitar for a few dollars per month. Head over to theguitarchannel.biz. Welcome to the Guitar Channel, welcome to La Chaîne Guitare. This is one of the very special quarantine interviews, the interview confinement, as we say in French. I am super happy to have on the other side of the Skype connection the one and only Mike Keneally. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, feeling good, keeping busy. How are you doing?
I'm great. The same here. Staying healthy and busy. I think that's the best way to weather this strange crisis we are going through at the moment.
I agree.
Yeah,
completely.
Where are you geographically, Mike? I don't remember.
I'm just a bit east of San Diego, California.
Mm-hmm. How is it the quarantine in your area at the moment?
Well, since I never leave my home, I don't know exactly. But I think in general we're kind of doing okay.
Okay.
It's not the I don't hear horror stories about what's happening in my town. I mean, we did have a bunch of questionable people doing a protest a couple of days ago. I saw some footage of that. And protesting the fact that there's a virus, I guess.
Okay.
No more virus. It's like, okay, whatever you say. But it's there's ridiculousness everywhere. And unfortunately, there seems to be more of that sort of thing in the country where I live. It might have something to do with our leadership, but who knows? But in any case. People seem to be getting by for the most part. I just had a bunch of groceries delivered.
Okay.
So we're eating, and I'm figuring out how to work this new Pro Tools rig that we've just begun assembling, and did some good stuff last night. So I'm starting to get into a groove with that, and just getting more acclimated to this version of normal.
Yeah, indeed. Tell us, what was the immediate impact of this quarantine? I think you were in the middle of a big tour with Devin Townsend, right?
Yeah, we were like precisely halfway through. It was we did 11 shows of a 22 show North American tour, and it was a day off in Memphis, and while we were there, the announcement came through that the president was stopping travel from the European Union, and we had many people. The vast majority of the people in our entourage, the band and the crew, didn't live in the U.S. So, we were just thinking. Paul, our tour manager, was thinking if there's a ban on travel coming in this direction, that's going to impact all travel going in all directions. There's a knock-on effect that happens. So we quickly had to contend with several realities at the same time. There was the thing of making sure that, first we had to decide, are we going to continue doing shows? We had found out, this was March 11th, we had found out already that the last show of the tour, which was scheduled to be San Francisco, was canceled. And we sort of extrapolated from that it seemed likely that additional shows were going to be canceled as well. It was just also unsettling, and we were trying to figure out what exactly is going on. Just how serious is this? Do we just knock this on the head now? Do we try to continue doing more shows when we don't really know what's happening? How safe is it? And we quickly came to several conclusions. We had to get people who lived in other countries at back home as soon as we possibly could, and then we had to ask ourselves: is it correct morally to continue doing shows when that would be just drawing vast quantities of people to enclosed spaces? All the shows were selling out, so we had just done 11 shows to a bunch of people packed together in very small space. There's no way to know what impact that already had. So and we quickly came to the conclusion that it wasn't right to keep doing more shows, and that we wanted to just get home as quickly as possible. So this was on the evening of the 11th, and then Paul, the tour manager, just got on the phone as quickly as possible to book flights, and within 5 hours I was at the airport in Memphis on my way home. And I've just been sitting here ever since. So like 6 weeks or so, and initially it was self-imposed lockdown, and then California was among the first of the states in the U.S. to kind of get serious about lockdown, and the benefits seem to be clear. It seems like, compared to other states, that California is managing to kind of keep things a bit more tightly reined in terms of outbreaks. Anybody with half a brain would seem to think that the right thing to do is just stay home and stay away from other people as much as possible. And I think I have slightly more than half a brain, so that's what I've been doing.
What were the other impacts? So you lost basically, 10 or 15 dates with Devin. So other projects who got cancelled or postponed to another date.
Yeah, well, I mean that's those dates have been rescheduled for September, but at this juncture, we don't even know how realistic that is. There's just no way to tell. I had a couple of shows with my band, Beer for Dolphins, booked at the Baked Potato in this month, April. Those obviously didn't happen. And then the Zappa band, the guys that I played with last year on the Bizarre World of Frank Zappa tour, we've been doing shows without the hologram that was on that tour, just going and playing, which has been incredibly fun. And we had a tour booked opening for King Crimson in North America. We were going to do 6 weeks of dates. That's been canceled. So all live work. I was going to go to Germany to do shows with my European group, the Mike Keneally Report, Jan Westman and Schroeder. We were going to play at Zappanale, which is the German East German Zappa festival, and then we were going to do some club shows on our own and opening for the band Saga. And then I was going to do this project called Solar Fire, which is Mick Rogers, the guitar player from Manfred Mann's Earth Band, who he really likes the early Manfred Mann Earth Band material from like the first 5 or 6 albums before their big commercial breakthrough with Blinded by the Light. But Manfred Mann himself doesn't want to play any of that stuff. They're still touring. Manfred Mann is like 80 or something, and they've still been touring as Manfred Mann's Earth Band. But Manfred Mann wasn't interested in playing that early material, so Mick wanted to form another band called Solar Fire, which is the name of one of those earlier albums, and he asked me to join basically as the surrogate Manfred Mann, although I would be playing some guitar too and not just keyboard as Manfred Mann does. And it was like a new project with the original bassist from Manfred Mann's Earth Band, and we were gonna premiere at this really cool festival called the Berg Herzberg Festival, where I played with the Mike Keneally Report a few years ago. All that's gone. Yeah. So what seems to be happening is most of this stuff is just being rescheduled for precisely a year. The King Crimson tour is happening basically the same dates in 2021. I'll play at Zappanale in 2021. So everything's just like been displaced 1 year to the right, and we'll see what happens with the Devin tour, since right now it's just kind of fingers crossed that we'll be able to do the rescheduled dates in September. So what all this means, I only basically, I make some money from doing studio sessions and stuff, but definitely the vast majority of my income comes from live work, and all of that was gone. And so I got home and I saw I really need to get much more self-sufficient in terms of my recording capabilities. But then I looked at the savings and I said, the money that I need to put together even a bare bones recording rig at home is not really there, so especially looking at how long it's going to be until I'm able to play live again. And I saw I'm just going to be draining my savings. the only way that I could see to continue to make money is to get serious about online platforms like Patreon and Twitch and Bandcamp and stuff like that, and use those resources to my best advantage. But I couldn't do that without putting a rig together. So I swallowed the pride and I asked for help on GoFundMe with putting together a recording rig. And the response was astonishing, just like double funded within a couple of days. And so I'm so grateful to the people who appreciate what I do. And I'm piecing together this rig, and I'm not a tech oriented person. So it's a very steep learning curve for me to, get on board with this stuff. But just last night I was in Pro Tools, doing some editing on a track that Steve Vai did some guitar playing on, a new song of mine.
Nice.
And doing some recording here with the Fractal and with this beautiful Apollo Twin X interface that Universal Audio was very kind enough to hook me up with, and I just had some really good friends who helped me out. Anuj Arora is a friend of mine who works for Apple. He helped me obtain a really nice new MacBook Pro. It's definitely the most expensive component of my rig, but thanks to his help, it was a little less expensive than it would have been. And just my friend, I can't pronounce his name, Jaris. He's on Facebook, and he hooked me up with just a lot of ideas and input about the right way to go in terms of gear. It's just been friend after friend after friend who's been really supportive in this time, and ultimately what it's going to do is allow me to make music, good quality music at home, and start using that stuff online. I'm a musician, it's all I can do, right? So I'm just going to try to just be parked here at home and use the internet resources as much as possible to continue surviving in one way or another.
That's great to hear that you were able to get a very nice recording rig at the moment. But what is surprising to me is that before that you didn't have a proper setup to work from home. Is that because you were touring a lot, or?
I hell, a long time ago I had, because I do most of my recording for the last bunch of albums at the Scott Chatfield who runs XOX Recordings, the label that I've recorded with for the last 2 decades. So he has a home in northern San Diego where we basically turned that into a functional recording studio. And the stuff that 10 years ago I was using to record at home got repurposed over there, and then the rig that I was using at home was no longer relevant with the operating system on my computer and stuff. So it's just, there's obsolescence that comes into play, and as something that was working for me in 2010 doesn't work for me anymore. So in order to get a current version, and Pro Tools is the platform that I'm most comfortable with using, to the extent that I have any chops with recording software, that all lives in Pro Tools. So I wanted to do that again, but I couldn't get a working Pro Tools that would work with the OS on my previous Mac, so I had to get a new computer. It was a set of dominoes falling over, and because I hadn't done any serious recording at home since 2010 or so, I had no choice but to just start from the ground up.
Yeah, start from scratch again. So does that mean that if people are watching this and want to have a Mike Keneally on their record, they can get in touch with you and do something with you? Yeah.
I'm absolutely available for work. Yeah, and in fact, I'm just about to launch into work on the second album by MFTJ, which was a project I did with Scott Shore, which came out about a month ago and has been really well received. And so he's already got the rhythm tracks for the next album completed. He sent those to me, and instead of going into a studio like I did for the first album, now I'll just be able to sit here at home and do all my overdubs. And I'm absolutely available for work. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's talk a little bit more about MFTJ. I was just listening to it right before we got online. So, and you also produced a very funky videos with your music. So, what's behind the project? What's the idea?
It's Scott Shore's baby. It's his concept, and he's a producer who I met through Marco Miniman, because Marco released a series of albums on Scott's label Lazy Bones, and Scott was co-producer on that stuff, and he also produced this album called Levin Torn White with Tony Levin, David Torn, and Alan White. Levin, Miniman, and Rudis. He's been involved with a number of really interesting projects. And at one point, we met on the road while I was out with Satriani when Marco was in the band, and Scott and I just hit it off. You know, he was living in New Zealand. He lives in Australia now, but we were just getting together for meals and stuff and hitting it off on a personal level. And then last year he said, you know what do you think about collaborating on something? I'm going to send you some rhythm tracks that I've done, and you just go in and just blow over them, basically just improvise over these tracks, which I did. I went into Double Time Studio with the engineer Jeff Forrest, he's the one who engineered my very first albums, Hat and Boil That Dust Speck and Sluggo. And so I went back to Double Time, which it's always wonderful to go back there. And spent ultimately 2 days in the studio, but I did one day where I just went and hog wild, just went crazy on guitars and keyboards, sent those tracks to Scott Shore, and then he went hunting and pecking through these tracks to find things that to him sounded like hooks or just interesting textures or different motifs that he could layer, sometimes even from different songs. Like I might have played something in another song, but he would grab it and layer it with something else, you know. So he just took the stuff that I gave him and sliced and diced and chopped it up and turned it into song forms. Then he sent that back to me again, and I went back in the studio and overdubbed, improvising over that stuff, and sent that back to him. And then he sliced and diced and chopped up that, and then he, you know, basically the result of that process is what you hear on the album. And it was, for me, it was 2 days in the studio just playing whatever, going out, just like spewing stuff, and then it was the turning that into songs, to digestible chunks of music. That was kind of Scott's job. Mm-hmm. And he did a fantastic job. To me, it's like a really fun, extremely listenable, you know, just like replayable album. And so I'm excited that we're already like sinking our teeth into the second one.
Yeah, indeed. I just got time to listen to a couple of tunes, and I said to myself, well, I need to go back to listen to some more because it's really good. And it's only available at the moment through Bandcamp, right?
Yes, it's a digital album. Scott and I are talking about the possibility of a physical release later, but as of now, it's a Bandcamp release. Mm-hmm. And I just saw, because several weeks ago, Bandcamp did a day where if people do purchases through Bandcamp on a specific day, that all of the income goes to the artists. And I just saw that Bandcamp's got another one coming up. I think it might be May 1st, but I'm not sure. But if people are interested in MFTJ, of course, I would not discourage anyone from going and checking it out today if they want. But also, if they're interested in this upcoming Bandcamp Artist Day, they could check that out too.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So as we are live on Facebook, if you have some question for Mike, don't hesitate to post them, and we'll relay them back to Mike.
You can monitor that stuff, because
yes.
Right now I'm just looking at you.
Excellent. Yeah, I am monitoring the chat room. Don't worry. Right. What are the other projects that you can talk about for the next couple of weeks or months?
Well, I have some recordings that I've done with some local San Diego musicians. It's a band called Back to the Garden. It's beautiful collective of local musicians who've been playing in the area for a long time, and just mainly what they do live is they go into a repertoire of mostly 60s and 70s music. Back to the Garden, it gives that kind of a Laurel Canyon vibe, right? An early 70s CSNY vibe, but they also play, Eric Clapton stuff, and just like a lot of really great classic rock music from the 60s and 70s, and they play it beautifully and sing it beautifully. So a friend of mine who's also a producer and musician locally in San Diego, named Jeff Berkeley, is he's the house engineer at the home studio which sounds smaller than it is. It's actually a beautiful facility on the grounds of the home of a musician named Jason Mraz. He's a very successful artist, and he's got this fantastic studio that Jeff works at. And Jeff said to me, you know, I've got this studio. I'm the house engineer. I've got access to it anytime. And there are many days where there's no projects happening. If you want to come and just record stuff and maybe use Back to the Garden as your band, and we'll all collaborate. And I said, that sounds amazing. I don't have any songs. And he said, well, just come and do whatever you want. So what I've been doing with Back to the Garden, you know, while during the time where people were still allowed to go out and do stuff together, we would just all show up at the studio, and I would write music on the spot. And they would learn it on the spot, and depending on how complex or non-complex it was, either we would learn an entire structure of a song and record it, or if it was a little trickier, we would just record the song in sections. We'd learn I'd write a part, we would learn that part, and we would record, you know, various takes of just that section, and then I would say, okay, now give me a few minutes and I'll write the next part, and they go hang out outside on this beautiful you know, grounds, and I would be inside working on a tune, and then I'd say, okay, I got the next part, and they'd come in and I'd teach it to them, and then we would record that. And so slowly we pieced together 11 songs this way, and I'm actually waiting to have those sessions delivered so that I can continue doing editing and more overdubs on that stuff. So that's one album in the works. And then I've got this other project of, you know, various pieces from, you know, my archives and some new stuff that just I'm going to be doing more work on that material here at home. So that's going to be, you know, basically another album at some point. And I was talking to Bear McCreary, who's a composer, writes a lot of material for movies and television, and he's got a solo album in the works that he wants me to record some stuff on. I can see already that there's going to be a lot to keep me busy, and you know, even though I really terribly miss going out and playing live, I see that this could, you know, I see momentum building for a new period. You know, everybody's got to do this, right? Everybody's got to figure out what their life consists of now, and I feel really fortunate that I have projects to keep me busy, and I'm going to see if it's possible to use formats like Twitch and Patreon to try to generate some kind of income so that I'm able to continue having groceries delivered to the house, and just try to stay productive. Like last night, I was having so much fun working on this track that Steve Vai recorded guitar for. I imported his tracks into the session, and it just sounded amazing. And then I got inspired because his guitar sounded so much better than the guitars I had previously recorded. So I trashed everything that I had done and recorded a new guitar track of my own through the Fractal, and that sounded like 5 times better than it did. And all of a sudden, there's just like so much vitality to it. It's got Pete Griffin on bass and Nick DiVirgilio on drums, and so it's this nifty band, you know, me, Steve Vai, Pete Griffin, Nick DiVirgilio, and it's just like I'm sitting here thinking, this is like this feels like the beginning of a new phase that I'm actually really going to enjoy, and I understand how fortunate I am because not everyone has these kind of opportunities, and a lot of people are struggling right now in terms of employment possibilities, and I'm not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. Everybody's got a lot to try to figure out right now, but I'm hopeful that I'll find a way to keep moving through this, and ultimately I hope that this turns into an important sort of learning experience for everyone, and I just hope that everyone stays safe and manages to stay healthy, and then manages to somehow stay employed. There's been a movement over the last few years generally towards people working at home. You know, a lot of people that I talk to, when they talk about their work, they say, usually I'm home. Maybe I'll go into an office 1 or 2 days a week, but the rest of the time I'm at home. So I think societally, things were kind of moving in that direction anyway, and now it's a necessity. So I know that there's like hard times ahead, and I would never downplay any of that. But I just hope that there's a way that we can all figure out ways to thrive in this situation and not just survive.
Mm-hmm. At the moment, if people want to support your music, they can go to Bandcamp, and you mentioned Patreon a couple of times. You have already a page up, or it is a project you are going to pursue?
I don't have a personal page yet up on Bandcamp. Right now, all I have on Bandcamp is the MFTJ project, which I definitely encourage people to check out. But if people do want to obtain my music, my solo music, then they should go to store.keneally.com. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's the Keneally store at XOX Recordings. All the albums that I've done, since 1992, basically 3 decades worth of my music. If people want to obtain that stuff, either physical or download, that's all at keneally.com. And XOX definitely could use the income as well. So if people were wanted to check out some of my albums, if anybody watching this doesn't already have them all, then store.keneally.com is the place to go.
Excellent. Are you going to do some live concert during the lockdown, or are you more into recording and then publishing stuff afterward?
I want to find a way to kind of combine them. Like I noticed that Devin, soon after we got off the road, he started a podcast, and one of the things he was doing on Twitch was just like going through his old Pro Tools sessions and explaining, what it all was that he choices he made and stuff like that. And that's great fun. So, as soon as I get my stuff together and I've got a webcam that's still on delivery, it's like, this computer camera is cool, but I need to be right here. It's like there are times where I'd like to be able to move around the room, walk over there and play the keyboard and maybe take the camera with. So I want to definitely do some performances. I'm still awaiting some gear before I can start doing that. And there's really interesting platforms to do that too. I just watched Andy Timmons doing 2 shows on Stage It, and Devin is doing a series of charity concerts on Stage It, and that's an interesting platform that I'm sure I'll make use of. But of course, Facebook, also stuff can be broadcast live just like we're doing right now, and there's so many resources available, and I can't see a reason not to make use of a lot of it, So there definitely will be live performances as soon as I feel confident in my relationship with the technology. I can't stress enough how not technologically minded I have been really dependent on the kindness of friends and coworkers to deliver the stuff that I do over the years, and now and some of that stuff that I've done on my own has made it out. Like on Scambot 1, there's this really bizarre song called Cat Brand Sandwich that is one of the things that I recorded on my own at home back in those days. But then I brought into the studio with Kara so that he could really polish it up and tweeze it so that it was ready for the world. And that stuff like that could still happen. I could do work on my own here, and then send the sessions to engineers who actually know what they're doing and present it to the world. But of course, those people need to be paid as well. So I have to figure out a way to generate in with the online resources. So it's definitely a work in progress. But the idea is to present recorded music, it's to present live performances, it's to be on here digging around my Pro Tools sessions and having a good time with that. Basically I see opportunities to present who I am and what I do musically in ways that go beyond just here's a stack of albums. It's more like here's my process, here's me creating songs on the spot, and everybody being witness to that as it's happening. And I'm still letting all those ideas sort of bubble in my head, but ultimately I think it could be pretty interesting. And also ultimately it makes sense at this point in my life to figure out ways to be creative and share that with people in a way that doesn't involve going out and traveling around the world, because I'm, as with all of us, not getting any younger. And right now I still love the road. I still love touring. It's fantastic. I'm looking forward so much to the rescheduled Crimson Zappa band tour next year. I can't wait. But I'm definitely staring down 60 right now, and there's it just keeps going. so at some point a guy's got to slow down. 20 years from now, I expect to still be making music, but I don't know how feasible it's going to be to just be traveling from Finland to Seattle all the time.
Yeah.
So we'll. So this is a good stage, necessary thing for me to be doing. It's just getting more self-sufficient at home.
It is still funny for me that you say that you are not super high technical, because I really remember when we did one interview when you were on tour with Joe Satriani, and we did an interview on stage, and you were surrounded by keyboards, by amplifier, by pedals all over the place. So your rig was not, okay, my guitar, cable and amp. It was pretty complicated. So you really already have this ability to play with a lot of gear and so on, right?
Yeah, well, it's always been about learning the absolute minimum amount of information in order to make the stuff go. And in the past, when I have worked with Pro Tools on my own, it's basically I've approached it like a very high tech cassette machine. but the thing that I've always been good at is editing. It's real easy to cut a region, move it around, do a fade, smooth it out, and I've had great fun. Like the very first thing I ever did on Pro Tools is a song on Scanbot 1 called Behind the Door, which has about 1,000 edits in it, and just all, because it's this is fun, and just creating sound worlds that don't exist in real life, and I was real excited about that. And that's something that I take to real easily, real naturally. But in terms of getting recording a good old-fashioned rock track, and I can't record drums around here, so that means I got to figure out how best to create drums, which involves MIDI, which is I've always MIDI, no, so and it just getting more involved in programming techniques and things like that. And then as opposed to just creating music and things that need to sound real. Figuring out ways to get some more conventional sounding things like drums and guitars and stuff sounding good, just get a good tone at the source. Those are the things that where it's I have to just learn to rely on my ear, and eventually the tracks that I record at home, they're not going to sound like a Foo Fighters record. They might be pretty eccentric, but I do want them to sound good, and on their arms. So that's the world that I'm about to be diving into.
We have a question in the chat room from Pat Omé. How many solo albums have you recorded?
The core sort of oeuvre is probably around 20 or so. I've lost track.
Okay.
But when you include all the special editions I've done that have an additional disc, which is essentially a whole other album, and live albums and other things, or downloading albums and stuff, it's around 40. I think 40 separate titles that I could point to and say, yeah, it's an made.
Do you have this kind of secret tap you can open to have your inspiration flow? It seems that you have been always involved in many projects, and I suppose that's also one reason that people are calling you, because you bring not only you as a musician, but also the fact that you have the brain power to bring a lot of ideas to anything. So what's your secret, Mike?
I don't know. I feel real lucky, but I think part of it has to do with the fact that I'm not technologically inclined, and that there are, in fact, precious few things that I am capable at. I'm so grateful to Sarah, my wife, for really handling the sort of minutia of my life. She handles all the bill paying and all this stuff that that I would be hopeless at. Ask me to do that. No, it's that that's not going to happen. So it's like, you know, we have a partnership, and like the way I rely on her to make my life go, I have relied on, you know, other people, technicians, other musicians, to make my music go. And that's, you know, so where I'm at now is like learning how to make more of the stuff go on my own. But as far as the actual creation of music, I have found that every once in a while it's like really good for me to take a moment off, after I did in 2004, I put out the album Dog, which also had an EP called Pup, and then I did this orchestral project called The Universe Will Provide, and that's also the year that the Vai piano reductions came out, so it was like a very productive time. And then I took about 3 years off from just like writing songs, and then when I came back. Actually, it was more than that. I think it was 2008 that I put together an album called Wine and Pickles, which was a collection of unreleased material in the archive, and that was kind of like clearing the decks for me to start the next round. And so I took several years off from even attempting to write songs, and then in quick succession came Scambot 1 and the special edition of that, which had another album, and Evidence of Humanity, which is the album I did with Marco Miniman, and then Wingbeat Fantastic, which is the album I wrote with Andy Partridge, and You Must Be This Tall, which was the other album that I made while I was making the album with Andy Partridge, and then Scambot 2 and Inkling, which was the end of that phase. That was sort of bookended by Scambot. Started with Scambot 1, ended with Scambot 2, and that was about a 6-7 year period of intense productivity. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then I took another breath and I said, okay, I'm gonna take a break. I wrote a couple of songs over the last several years, but mostly I've been on the road, working with other musicians, collaborating that way, and really enjoying taking a break from the idea of I have to make an album. You know, there was that period of a bunch of years where the way I put it was that there was a big neon sign just flashing on and off. album.
You have to work. Yes.
Yeah. And I always have to work, but I found that I was really enjoying touring more and playing more with other people and collaborating more with other people, and that led to me co-producing Devin's album, Empath, which was as satisfying to me as any one of my own albums in terms of feeling like, wow, I really achieved something there. I'm so grateful for the experience of working on that album, and then for the experience that I've had going out and playing live with Dev over the past few months. Fiercely grateful for that, and so now I was already thinking along the lines of I'm ready to kind of get back into it, and I was recording a few new songs and collecting some older unreleased material and saying, okay, I've got the beginnings of something here. And then I was thinking, well, I'm like getting ready to write some new stuff. And then I started doing the studio project with Back to the Garden and writing on the spot there and realizing, it's like if you put me in a position and then apply a little pressure, songs just start popping out, That's good. So so now here I am at home, left to my own devices, day by day becoming more familiar with my equipment, and I can see that very soon there's going to come a period where I'm just like popping stuff out all the time, and I'm rubbing my hands. I'm very eager for that phase to begin.
Very cool. We have a question from Forth in the chat room who would like to know what is your main guitar at the moment?
Well, I've been on the road with Devin, and Devin is insistent on everything being perfectly in tune. So I obtained several guitars from Kiesel. Let me show you one. Hold on.
Yeah. We want to see some guitars for sure.
Okay. This is the one I was recording with last night. It's a very beautiful instrument. Mm-hmm.
With an Evertune bridge. Yeah.
But I still, with the Evertune bridge, but I still, I was also recording with this, which is basically
the old Clapton guitar. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is Jesse, and you'll see that it's been immortalized in this painting up above my head, thanks to Keith Moreland, who's the guitar player in a band called Pet Park, whose album I produced a couple of years ago, and he painted that photo for me. And then also there's this Framus over here that Devin very kindly gave to me that is also got an Evertune on it. So I've discovered the very specific delight of being perfectly in tune. There's nothing quite like the first time I played an Evertune was with Satriani, and I didn't realize at that time that it was possible to adjust the tuning peg so that you could do bends on it. It was in zone 2, which meant that if you bent the string, nothing happened, and that was disconcerting to me. And then years later, Devin said to me, "No, you just do this, and now you can do all the bends you want." It's like, oh shit!
Nobody told me. Read the fucking manual. Yeah,
like Satriani specifically fixed it so that I couldn't bend. So that was a whole new planet, to occupy. I still have my friend Rob Samler last year. He came to see the Zappa band play at the Big Potato, and he gave me a Roxy SG, which is a
replica of
a replica of the instrument that Frank played on Roxy and elsewhere. That Dweezil had a hand in the design of. And that's a beautiful, beautiful instrument. I have to record with the, but I look forward to doing it. And then this is probably the most precious thing that I have in the collection right now. This is the Zahn fretless bass that belonged to my dear friend Doug Lunn, who passed away a few years ago, and his wife and daughter wanted me to be the caretaker for this instrument. So this is an instrument that has a tremendous amount of history and soul contained within, and I've already done some tracking with this, and there was also a fretted Zahn that ended up in the possession of Brian Beller, and both of us are humbled to have instruments in our possession. So I've got some nice things to record with here.
Excellent. We have another question from Vince Johnston. How does Mike get's odd signature to sound natural and organic compared to metronomic, jag, the feel of most prog band like Dream Theater? Did you get the full question? Yeah.
Well, first of all, Dream Theater are friends of mine, so
okay. Okay, let's take the Dream Theater part out.
But I guess the question is, how come my music doesn't sound mechanical and robotic? I was never interested in going all the way in doing what's required to get music to feel that way. I always like stuff to have a little bit of hair on it. And so it's like, I got in the 70s listening to really crazy music, and very little of it was recorded to a click. There was no Pro Tools. Everybody was playing live at the same time to tape with minimal fixes possible after the fact. Obviously, you can punch in, but I remember having this conversation with Frank, talking about how it always seemed to me like his records sounded just like perfect, that everything just sounded amazing, and he's like, you have no idea what sort of science fiction is required to get it to sound that way. But the thing is, now, that was 1988 or 1987 when I said that to him. Now when I go back and listen to those records, I hear all kinds of humanity. I hear all kinds of, quote, imperfections, unquote, which is part of what makes them so wonderful, right? Makes them alive. That's what makes them vibrant. You can feel what it's like when humans are interacting with each other and playing at the very top of their ability. Part of why my music doesn't sound mechanical is that I don't have the skill set of a lot of these guitar players that you can see now on YouTube, just like unbelievable facility, unbelievable stuff that they're doing, and to the point where some people think, are they really doing it, or did they speed up?
Yeah, the jury's still out about that. Yes.
And I'm still working with the skill set that I've got, but part of it is like I've always had any patience with the idea of sitting and learning these techniques that were going to be perfect or impressive. What excited is always about what's the next thing that I haven't discovered yet? What's the next thing that I haven't found, sound-wise, not technique-wise? I'm like, I need I need to hear something that I've never heard before. And when I play something, especially on stage, although also in the studio, when I'm making a song in the studio or when I'm improvising on stage, always the overriding thought is I want to do something that I've never heard. And that kind of by its nature keeps it from being overly precise, robotic, and mechanical, because it's perfect. I'm always on the cusp of discovering something, which means I haven't mastered it, which means that you'll hear me fuck up. It's like I definitely make mistakes on stage, and sometimes I wish I didn't do that, but it's like that's the musician I am. I can't stop myself from always reaching beyond for the next thing. That to me is just like a more valuable use of my time than mastering something and presenting it exactly that same way from night to night. Unless it's somebody else's music. I lock into a completely different mindset if I'm playing Devin's stuff. At that point I consider it a responsibility to master his stuff and play it to the absolute top of my ability, present it respectfully and dependably from night to night. But even in that, I'm still me. I have my way of phrasing things. I have my way of hitting the instrument, and it was a joy for me on the Devin tour, and will be again, because just last year with the Zappa tour, the Bizarre World tour, it was the first time I've ever consented to using in-ear monitors. I've always railed against that. I'm such an old school guy, right? No, man, put a wedge down in front of me, right? It's like that's real rock and roll. But on that Zappa tour, we were accompanying recordings of Frank, and we were playing to a click. We had to. It was the only way to keep everybody aligned. So by necessity, you can't have a click screaming at you through a wedge. So you had to go to in-ears. And at that point, I discovered how glorious it is to play with in-ears. Because you can hear everything really well. You can turn up the audience mics so you don't feel like you're disconnected from the crowd. And you can, like on that tour, I was running my rig in stereo. I had a KSR amp going on my left side, and I had the Fractal Axe FX3 going on my right side, and that was my stereo tone. And I had two volume pedals controlling the levels of each, so that I could really, get the balance between the two sounds, and just like really build this nice little world for myself. So on the Devin tour, Devin and I were both going through Axe FX3. There were no amps on stage. There's the only thing on the stage that was actually producing acoustic tones that were moving molecules in the air were drums and vocals. Everything else was direct. So I had a Devin, I think I had me on the left and Devin on the right, if I remember. No, it's probably the other way around. I think I had Devin on the left and me on the right. So it already feels like ages ago that we were on the road doing this stuff. It's amazing. The 6 weeks feels like the decades to me. And so I hear Devin on the left. We both are playing through Axe FXs with very similar tones, and for a large part of the show, we're playing the exact same thing. And I had these conversations with Dev, where he said, this is the core of, because he's a lot more metal conversant than I am. It's like my introduction to metal was playing with Death Clock, and really liking And Justice for All, when that came out. But I haven't gathered a large library of metal music that I listened to for fun. And when I did join Death Clock, I said to Brendan, I'm not a metal guitar player. Why do you want me to? And he said, you play Frank Zappa. You can play anything. What are you talking about? And I had to become conversant with metal guitar techniques at that point, because I played with Steve Vai, but that's not really metal. That's Steve Vai music. So I got a certain amount of metal technique from Brendan. But it's still not like somebody who's devoted themselves to that discipline for years and years and years. So when I'm playing with Devin, it's like he impressed upon me that the texture of his music and the texture of a lot of metal is about two guitars playing the exact same thing at the exact same time, and so I got him on one side, me on the other side, and I got such joy out of just locking with him, and a huge takeaway from learning with Devin, and it's such a simple thing, but to hear him elucidated verbally was a revelation. just the simple importance of laying back behind the beat. You know, it's like Devin would much prefer something be just slightly behind the beat than just slightly ahead of the beat.
Okay.
Especially if it's complex music, if it's dense music. And I have, you know, I've experienced this now working in Pro Tools. If you take, you know, you've hit a guitar chord, and if you are playing to a grid, you see where the beat is, and then if your guitar chord is slightly ahead of the beat, it makes everything feel nervous and anxious and just like jumbly. But then if you settle everything just behind the beat, all of a sudden everything is confident and together, and even if the music is really crazy and intense and you know, loud and noisy, that's going to be, the impact is going to be that much more powerful if everything is settled back in the pocket, because it exudes this confidence and this calmness and this thing of, we're not like rushing to get there. We got nothing to prove. We know exactly what we're doing, even when things are out there most crazy. It's, you know, we got this under control, and that like is even more terrifying, you know, as opposed to, you know, that might be terrifying, just like, what the hell was that? But there's a different kind of power that comes from, yes, things are really unnerving right now, and we're totally in command, you know. So
was there some specific challenge to play Devin Townsend music compared to what you did in the past with Joe Satriani, with Steve Vai, with Frank Zappa?
Well, you know, every context is a different challenge. Yeah, mm-hmm. With Devin, it was this, you know, this, for me, this new focus on the idea of laying back. And, you know, in the past, when I was with Vai and having to do stuff in unison with him or in harmony with him, even stuff as crazy as like the Attitude song, that was really just about learning the notes, mastering the notes, and then executing them to the best of your you know, ability. And which, in the case of playing with Steve, is a real challenge, because he's got, you know, several inches on me in finger length advantage. So a thing that for him is just like going blah, 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 for me is you know, so it's a lot of mind matter there. With Devin, it's like, yeah, there are some challenging parts for sure, but it's, you know, having gone through learning how to play Zappa melodies and stuff, that was something that came more readily. But it is this thing of phrasing in unison with him and just making the song feel really good, you know. With Satriani, for the most part, if we're both playing guitar, I'm playing a rhythm part and he's playing a lead on top of it. It's not this thing of having to lock. You know, with in that case, it's locking with the bass and drums that everything is doing. With Devin, it was this new focus on being behind the beat, settling into the thing, and learning, because I was hearing everything in my ears, how much. And this isn't going to translate to an audience the same way that it translated inside my head while it's happening. But I did notice that if I'm playing a part along with Devin, and then I turn my pick just slightly and attack the string just differently, all of a sudden it sounds like there's like a trumpet section. And then if I move my pick this way and play along with it, then it sounds like a group of cellos or something. I realized, man, there's like all these textural and sonic things happening all the time, that even the most subtle little distinctions have a lot of impact on. And so at that point, the challenge became, okay, figure out exactly where to place the pick, exactly where in the pocket to playing, where on to be playing, the stuff exactly how much pressure to apply to make the stuff sound as powerful and heavy and just like really have a foundation to it. And so that was like definitely technique, but not like, you know, crazy facility technique. It was more just like, it was almost like thinking like a producer and just like using all the sonic resources at hand to just deliver things as powerfully as possible. And it's just wonderful, because I love Devin's music so much, and I love everybody in the band so much, and the audience is so giving and generous and supportive, that, you know, the sum total of all these things is that after 32 years of touring experiences, and some amazing touring experiences with my own band, with people that I love and everything, just in terms of like pure bliss, I never experienced anything like I've experienced on the road with Devin in the last few months. It was incredible, and I can't wait to do more.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah. We have a question from Mike Coughlin. Are the plans to record the Zappa band?
Mike.
Are the plans to record the Zappa band on hold until the Crimson tour is rescheduled?
To record the Zappa band, that hasn't been discussed. That's interesting. Nobody's gathering in studios right now, so if we're going to record something, it would have to be pieced together. And I don't know if that would be as satisfying as getting in a studio and doing it that way. And it would actually be fun to do some recording with the Zappa band. It would be nice, because we have some repertoire that's never been recorded or never been released. Several pieces that we were doing that actually we found in boxes, cardboard boxes in the Zappa office that Frank had written but never recorded.
Nice.
But that we were playing live on the hologram tour, and that we've been playing live and getting ready to play live again on the tour. And it would be nice to get recordings of some of that unreleased stuff. Nothing in the works, but it's once humans are allowed to gather again, I would love to do that.
Mike, it was really excellent to be able to talk to you during this lockdown. So thank you very much for your time. It is always a pleasure. If people want to have some more Mike Keneally, head over to theguitarechannel.biz or to lachaîneguitare.com, because I think we recorded maybe 3 or 4 interviews together. If people want to follow your project and get on board when you launch your Patreon page and so on, where can they reach you? What's your website?
The website is Keneally.com. I have 3 separate pages on Facebook. Personal profile where I have hit the max, but of friends, but people can still follow me there. But there's also a fan page and a group. So just search Mike Keneally on Facebook, and you'll find a variety of resources there. And I'm on Twitter. And I'm on Instagram, which I use only sporadically because there's I don't enjoy it. I just don't enjoy the interface. I don't like the fact that you can't really interact with Instagram effectively on a computer. You have to do it on your phone, and oftentimes there's things that I would like to do on Instagram that are not easy to do with the phone. So inevitably I just don't do anything on Instagram. But I've done some things on Instagram, but I haven't worked really hard to cultivate a following there or anything. But there's stuff on Instagram that you can check out. And then again, if people want to check out my catalog of music, then store.keneally.com is the place to go. And then for the new album MFTJ, that's mftj.bandcamp.com.
All right, excellent. And hopefully next time, Mike, we will be able to do a guitar in hand interview when you are in Paris or somewhere else, okay? We'll do that.
I really look forward to that. Yeah, man. You stay well, Pierre.
Yes, I will. Thank you very much. Stay well, stay at home. Thank you very much to everybody for staying online and commenting, asking some questions. And feel free to reach out to Mike for some more questions. And this video will be also available on YouTube after that. Thank you very much, Mike, and stay well and stay home. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.
Pour le prix d'un magazine, abonnez-vous à la chaîne Guitare pour accéder aux vidéos intégrales. For the price of a magazine, subscribe to the Guitar channel to access the full videos.